This one I found interesting. Writers don't need social media. Obviously, that would be a minority opinion, but Peter Dirk makes some pretty good arguments here. I don't agree with all of it, but I do think there is merit to many of the things that he says about social media and whether it's actually a positive tool for writers. So even if you have no intention of going off social media, I don't have any intention of going off social media. There are some, I think, some good food for thought here on how you handle yourself if you're going to stay on, especially when he makes the arguments of whether it's actually a positive, in a net positive in authors' lives and the use of their time and all that sort of thing. So let's take a look at what Peter Dirk has to say. I've actually been sharing his articles for a while, and when I share someone else's articles, I try to find them online, and I've never been able to find Peter Dirk online anywhere. And I guess the nature of this article explains why he's so tough to track down. All right, so Peter Dirk's Writers Don't Need Social Media. Social media, we hate it, but as writers, we have an excuse. It's part of the gig. For us, it's necessary. All the hate, the stupid arguments, all the politics, all getting angry at celebrities we don't even really know for doing things we don't understand. It's all part of the game, right? Somehow we're all just trapped in this effing dystopian nightmare where writing down stories also involves stuff like Snapchat filters and TikTok stardom. That's what I thought, but now I'm asking, is it though? Is it necessary? Is what you're doing with it necessary? Could you be a writer without social media? Hey, welcome back, man. I'm glad you're here. All right. But is the next section. Let me be sure that's back on screen. Every time I talk about this, I get a bunch of feedback on social media, of course. And again, this is Peter Dirk talking. Saying that I'm a huge idiot. This feedback comes in two flavors. Flavor one, I've sold a ton of books thanks to social media, and you're a huge idiot. This feedback always, thank you, man. This feedback always comes from a writer you and I have never heard of. It'll be someone who wrote either a bizarre looking novel of self-discovery or something like a 10-minute summary of a pop business tome. Flavor two, hey, as long as you're writing, expressing yourself, sales don't matter. Let's just address both flavors at once. If I wrote this article called Why You Can't Run a 4-Minute Mile, I'd get some feedback from a handful of people who've done it, and I'd get some feedback from a handful of people who are like, dude, it doesn't matter, the run is in your heart. And while those are both fine statements, I guess, I'm still correct. Almost everyone, if not everyone, who reads that column will not be able to run a 4-minute mile. So you're saying you can't is accurate. Maybe some of you are reaping huge rewards from social media, but most of you aren't. All right, so again, I don't necessarily want anybody to get depressed by this. It's just the points he's making about social media and writing may need to be something we reconsider as we go forward as authors. All right, ROI, return on investment. Ask yourself, what's the return on investment with social media and how am I measuring it? Most of us will do a vague, I'm building a brand kind of thing, or what does that mean really? Just the more tweets, the better? How confident are you that social media brought you book buyers? Are you able to directly attribute these sales? Have you compared social media use to other forms of advertisement? How does social media compare to pricing deals you can set up? The whole premise that social media marketing is worthwhile for you without some real world testing is BS, speculation. And nobody does the testing. Why? Because we all know what we'll find. It's not all that helpful, and we have no excuse to use social media. I will say that the way most people use social media does not produce results. And like he said, probably all the sales that you can trace directly to social media are probably a little scant for everyone. Of course, I've done Amazon ads and other types of ads as well. Not all of those have worked out. And just looking at different ways of connecting with people on social media. So I do see sales from it, but it generally it's kind of hard to attribute where every sale comes from. I've actually gotten some, even not being affiliate status, I've gotten some sales here on Twitch from people just going into my about page and checking out a book or coming on and asking me which book they should read first or things like that. So Again, if you start running the numbers, it doesn't look like that's a huge return on investment, but the fact that it's happening kind of speaks to some potential down the road. Again, most of us have been in social media a long time, and like he says, most people aren't seeing a lot from it. So, you can't. People tweet their book cover, and then they're not really getting a bunch of people buying. So he does have a point there. All right, the gamble. The comparison of social media to a slot machine is used a lot to make the point that sites like Twitter reinforce user behavior like doom scrolling, but less common is the comparison for someone trying to market their shit. Social media marketing and social media just for funsies work the same way. Lots of you probably have 100K tweets under your belt. I think I'm closer to 30,000. I'm nowhere near 100K. And yet, and yeah, you pull that slot machine arm 100,000 times, you'll have some wins. It's a lottery. Some will make huge gains, but almost everyone will expend resources for no gain whatsoever. There's very little media meritocracy on social media. Very little work in, product out. It's a as good as random. All right, so he probably has a point there too. All right, scummy behavior. You've seen it, the tweets that go something like this. Let's boost indie authors. Retweet this and tag your favorite. You retweet your favorite indie, perhaps not realizing that you're also retweeting the image of the original tweet's creator added in, usually the cover image of their own book. This is some scummy stuff. By pretending to give care about indie authors, this person is boosting their own signal on the back of other indie authors. This is the worst version of the post meant to elicit responses the original creator doesn't give a flying F about. It's just a more complex version of what's your favorite Halloween movie, or the slightly more creative I'm looking for horror books, let me hear what you like. Nobody cares what randos on Twitter like. If I want a list of horror movies, I will not ask Twitter. That's idiotic. Remember, when a fellow writer tells you that social media is an absolute necessity, they aren't just giving you an economic fact. They're defending their own behavior. All right, now I will push back on this a little bit. He is right. There is the vast majority of people eliciting interaction on Twitter are a little bit underhanded and that sort of thing. But I will say that there are people who do seek out book recommendations on Twitter. Now, if you just go on there and constantly share your own books when someone asks for a book recommendation, that's a little squirrely. But I think some of this comes down to curation. So, like on my Twitter, I'm not interacting a lot with political posts. You can't avoid political posts, because even if you bring on a book person, which is most of the people I look for, not just for sales, but just because that's what I'm interested in, you're going to get their political opinions too. Everybody vents on either Twitter or Facebook or both. Those are the venting places for most people, even people that aren't overtly political. But what you spend your time interacting with changes a lot. So if you can develop the ability to scroll past those things, and I sometimes look for hashtags about book recommendations and things, and I'll typically recommend other people's books as much as I can, and those interactions become a little more positive. Those people follow me, I follow them, and then more of my Twitter becomes about books. Occasionally those people will come on and buy something from me because I did share something else with them. But the part of the goal is to simply curate who's on my Twitter feed. Who am I seeing? Who am I interacting with? Who's interacting with me? So some of this that he's talking about is the result of like authors following authors and trying to get follow backs, which by itself is not a problem. I love the networking on there, even if it's just chatting about writing with people who legitimately want to talk about things or joke about things. But when you're looking for people with the same interests as you, and you continue to bring those people in, and maybe mute or push out people that from your feed that are particularly toxic, or they're retweeting particular politicians' tweets 27 times in a row, that kind of thing, then your feed kind of cleans up a little bit, and I think this is true of Facebook even more than it is Twitter, but you can actually create a positive environment for yourself on there. Some people call that going into a bubble, and that's fine. I don't think you had to. If you think of it again, just ask. I don't think you have to eliminate everybody who thinks differently than you, but you also don't have to keep somebody on that's just ranting. I have, and you don't have to push somebody out of your life just because you aren't connected on social media. I have friends that I've had for a long time, and I know this is a barrier for a lot of people, but there are a couple friends online that I disconnected myself from online so that I could stay friends with them in real life. We don't talk every day, and I'm not seeing everything they're posting. But for me, people that are posting anti-mask stuff during the pandemic, or are posting stolen election conspiracy theories, and they're piling on with that. I could keep snoozing those people forever, but I always have this moment where I'll have 2 or 3 people I've snoozed pop up at once, and suddenly my Facebook feed is all toxic again, and I'm like, oh, here they were again. So I'm snoozing them again, or I unfollow them and I don't see anything, and then I'm curious why we're even connected on there. So in some cases I've literally just went ahead and blocked or put them off, and we still have the same circles of friends outside, and I'm better friends with them for not being friends with them on social media, and that's something that a lot of times I don't think really consider. I've been using Twitter since 2009, and I'm definitely morphed how I use it a few times over the years. And clever saying, I've snoozed so many people. My problem with snoozing, and again, I've done that a long time, is that typically I'll end up doing it all in the same day. Like I'll get tired of people all at the same time, and so I'll snooze about 4 or 5 people. So someday, 30 days down the road, suddenly it's like something blew up on my Facebook because all these people come back in with their same thing. I haven't been on Twitter that long. I don't remember what date I came on, but I don't think it was as early as 2009. But of course the platform's probably evolved insanely over that time period. Even just when you first got on there, you didn't think of it as sort of a political dumping ground like we do now. But of course politics has changed too, and I don't think you can blame all that on social media. But I do think we have more power to curate our experience on there than we do. All right, so again, Peter's article here is about whether authors can handle that, and in some cases, if you're just getting on social media and getting mad, that's probably not the best use. His next section, it's not just money. Does social media make you happier? And I guess this is kind of what we're talking about. I don't really hear from people who love being on social media. Even a cat adoption resource I follow gets a boatload of stuff every time that some Yahoo thinks, based on their zero experience, that a cat is being mistreated in some way. When you're on social media and selling your stuff, consider whether the exchange of happiness for book sales is worthwhile. How many times has social media wrecked the entire day for you? And what's the monetary value of that? Even if social media is a tool that improves your sales, what are you willing to give up for those sales? I do think there's a point to be made there. If it's impacting mental health, then arguably the way you're using it is not helping you very much. Working for free. We don't pay writers, but you do get publicity. That's the classic line delivered by bad publishers, right? That is true. If you think that deal stinks, how about this one? We don't pay writers, and there's a worse than random chance you'll get any publicity at all, and any publicity that you do will be done by you. He also says that's the promise of social media. You add content to their platform for free, and the implied promise is that you'll gain notoriety. Most of us wouldn't consider that deal from an indie press. Why are we doing it for a multi-billion-dollar corporation? Again, there's an argument to be made there. There's also value in the fact, I think, that social media is free, and of course we all know that if we're not paying for something, then we are the product. Hurt is the next section. What are the chances of social media hurting you versus social media helping? And again, my counter argument's always about curation. There are plenty of folks out there looking to write articles about the latest online kerfuffle, real or imagined. There are not a lot of people looking to write articles about how a good Twitter follower you are. Nobody can make a judgment about how you use your Instagram in light of a national tragedy if you don't have one. I think this is particular about politicians too. There was a long period of time where the only thing politicians accomplished on social media was getting in trouble. I don't know that that's changed very much, but I think we've kind of reached a point where it almost doesn't matter what they say. It's hard to get into trouble as a politician now compared to the past. In terms of writers, if you say the wrong thing, compared to what the zeitgeist of your circles in the industry think, you can get into a lot of trouble. I think those things can be navigated too, but he does have a point of the idea that sitting on a you're kind of sitting on a time bomb in the sense of like, if you have a bad day or you say the wrong thing or you have a reaction before you think it out, then you can get yourself into a lot of trouble with no upside. So I do think there's a warning to be had there, whether people decide to stay on social media or not. All right, a better plan. Write a lot, write good stuff, and then pay someone to do your social media for you. Or write a lot, write good stuff, work a full-time job, and pay someone to do your social media for you. I enjoy being on social media and kind of sharing, jokes and things like that. So I would miss it if I wasn't on there. Peter goes on to say, I'm a fan of tipping point theory, which in this case would probably say that when you're first starting, the publicity you do isn't going to be effective. As you grow a little bit organically, you'll have a base, and from there, marketing is a bigger deal. Why are so many of us acting like medium famous authors when we're not even mildly famous yet? Me doing a bunch of social media promo is like me looking at flights for the author tour in my mind. That is pretty funny, and there's a point to be made there. We do kind of behave like we've already achieved more success than we have. It's kind of along those theories of like dressing for the job you want as opposed to the one you have. But there's also an argument to be made that there's ways to handle your online presence when you're small and growing that's different from when you're a medium author. So like even in terms of Twitch, like trying to take lessons from big streamers and apply it to a small stream may not work as well because it's a different environment and that kind of thing. And there's even several big streamers that have said that. So I think there is a point to be made about acting like a bigger author as opposed to finding a way to grow from the place that you currently are. Make that money. Social media takes the world's content and uses that as scaffolding to sell ad space. You post on Instagram, and in between your pics and your buddies, there's a paid ad for some BS. Make that money for yourself. Write more blogs, fewer tweets. Set up ad revenue for yourself on your site. Set up links to products using sites like Bookshop to make a few bucks off your work. Post your pics on your website, not your Instagram. If you tweet a joke a day, throw that on Patreon. Release them to people who pay you $1 a month. Maybe you won't make anything, but if that's the case, then you know the monetary value of your sense of humor. Stop working for the man, start working for you. All right, I like the idea of doing more things for yourself, and I've experimented with some of that in terms of like things that I sell only from my website and not through Amazon. There's obviously mixed results to that kind of stuff. I do think there's value in sharing to a broader audience, but again, he kind of has a point that if people won't pay for what you're putting out there, then you question its value, I suppose. Again, I don't agree with him completely, but there's an idea there to consider. Lastly, wants and needs. I'm not here to tell you that writers can't use social media. I'm here to say you don't have to. If you like it, great. Have a effing blast. But if you hate it, do the legwork that lets you do the math. You'll find that even if social media brings you a handful of sales, it's not the make or break of your career. There is a point to be made there. I got people responding to Amazon ads who have no idea who I am in terms of my social media presence. And if you want to be a writer, not a social media manager, convert your time online to time writing another book. Maybe it doesn't sell, but at least at the end of it, you've got a book. And I do think more time needs to be spent with writers writing than playing on social media. Now, of course, all that said, I'm here on Twitch doing my own thing, so it's a different sort of platform. It's not one that's the most natural for most authors, but again, then maybe it means that it has some potential. And so I do think there is some creation potential in some social media platforms that I think is kind of untapped, and that may be part of what he's maybe not considering.